The most ironic part about all of this is the fact that we sat and had dinner with Afro-Palestinians in Palestine. We sat and broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem.
Love your fellow as yourself. This is a direct verse out of the Torah. The Torah, which is the birth of Judaism. The Torah, which is the birth of a civilization that was given morals and ethics. That prior to the Ten Commandments and prior to the giving of the Torah, there was no law and order in the world. There was no code, no ethics, no morals. What God provided the world during the revelation on Mount Sinai 3,337 years ago was a code of ethics and morals, which means love your fellow as yourself, regardless of race, color, or religion. We need to remember that. We are all children of God. No matter what race, color, or religion we are from, we are all created in God's image. And we cannot and shall not be prejudiced against any race, color, or religion when you understand that we all have a spark of God in us. Please listen to this presentation of a trip to the Middle East with a group of Black Americans and see how it turned into a very painful and sad event. So please listen into this presentation. Kindly subscribe to this channel so that we can continue on spreading a little bit of light to push away a lot of darkness.
For me to admit, because I was so excited to go on this trip with Black Americans, because I was always under the impression that Black people will be our greatest allies because they understand more than anybody what it's like to live under occupation, what it's like to be oppressed and racially profiled. But during the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing oppression Olympics to fully grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine. Some people came on the trip with a very limited understanding of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, which is problematic in and of itself. But the most problematic thing was the fact that some people were applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to a place where it does not apply. I am not going to sit here and deny that anti-Blackness exists in every single part of the world. But the issue of race is much different in Palestine than in most other places in the world. In Palestine, Palestinians of all colors are undoubtedly the most oppressed people. In Palestine, a non-Palestinian Black person is more privileged than a Palestinian of any color. And an American, Black or white, is one of the most privileged people in Palestine, right beneath Israelis. Some people in the group were too busy victimizing themselves and taking out their anger on all the wrong people to sit with the reality that in modern day, there are some people that are more oppressed than them. One person in particular was incredibly problematic, especially considering she was one of the group leads who was hosting private conversations exclusively for the 7 Black people in the group, which under almost any other circumstances I would encourage. I encourage Black people to create safe spaces for themselves to discuss racial issues among themselves. But the issue is that the only comments I heard come out of this person's mouth about Palestine and Palestinians were negative, were about how racist we are, were about how slavery persisted until the 20th century in Palestine, which is such an uneducated take, by the way. It was not exclusive to Black people, and it was not done mostly by Palestinians. So I believe these conversations being hosted by a person who came to Palestine with biases against Palestinians were so dangerous to Palestinians and ultimately to Black Palestinian solidarity. The most ironic part about all of this is the fact that we sat and had dinner with Afro-Palestinians in Palestine. He sat and broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem. And they are black. They are visibly black. And yet they are highly respected in the Palestinian community for the work that they do for Palestinians. I even talked to the chef at our hotel in the last couple of days, who was a political prisoner. He had just gotten out of prison 2 months before we arrived in Palestine. And he told us that he sat side by side with an Afro-Palestinian, son of the couple who runs the Afro-Pali Center. He sat with him in prison, and he was shocked when I asked him about racism in Palestine, because he was like, those are my brothers. I don't care what color they are. During this trip, I sat with Palestinians and I told them, talk to me bluntly. I'm a Palestinian. I'm not going to judge our community. Talk to me about racism in Palestine. And every single one of them was like, what is there to say? Like, racism exists in every community, yes. But in Palestine, it's actually few and far between, because the issue of race is so much more complicated in a place like Palestine. And I have been involved in Black activism for many years. And I know that when I am in Black spaces, it is not my place to call out issues within the Black community, especially when those people are being slaughtered. When I am in Black spaces, I am there to observe, to learn, to be an ally, not to call out Black people. By the way, these same people who sat there and talked all this shit about how racist Palestinians are did not hesitate to pose in front of a ginormous George Floyd mural painted by a Palestinian artist. They posed with that artist in front of the mural. And I bet they wouldn't dare look that artist in the face and say that he's racist. By the way, go support that artist. He's Banksy.2 on Instagram. He's an incredible person, incredible artist who I'm still in communication with. He is struggling right now. His daughter is in the hospital, so please reach out and try to help in any way that you can. But I refused to pose in that picture with the rest of the group because literally an hour before that, they were making fun of Palestinians. We passed a mural that was supposed to be, I believe, of Nelson Mandela, but it wasn't the greatest art. And so it kind of looked like George Floyd, and they couldn't tell who it was. And they literally said, I'm so sick of these people. And yet they won't hesitate to pose in front of a George Floyd mural for a social media photo op. Even when we were about to walk into a masjid, there were beggars outside the masjid who asked some people for money. And she made a comment about how, oh, notice how they're not asking the Black people for money because they think all Black people are poor. And I said, you don't know that. Those same people didn't ask me, a Palestinian American, for money. They're not assuming I'm poor. In fact, when they know you're American, you're immediately up here to them. They immediately assume you have money and that you're privileged in ways that they'll never experience. The reason that they didn't ask some people for money had nothing to do with the fact that those people are Black. They simply just approached a few people out of the entire group asking for money. I could ramble about this for hours because it was one of the most frustrating things of my life to watch people come from America to a place like Palestine and act like they're more oppressed than people literally living under occupation. And it's so ironic because the entire time I'm trying to find parallels between the lives of Palestinians, between the racial profiling that I experienced as a Palestinian and the experiences of Black people in America. I thought that this would be an opportunity for us to come together and understand each other better, not to create more division. But this is why some people are so dangerous to the movement, not only to the pro-Palestinian movement, but also to Black activism. Because if I was somebody else, if I haven't already done so much work for the Black community, if I didn't already have a deep understanding of racial dynamics, this entire experience might have pushed me away from the Black community. But I know that these rotten tomatoes in the community do not represent the Black community as a whole. One of the most ironic parts about all of this is that before making this video, I was sitting in a cafe in Amman, journaling my thoughts about this topic, and I got interrupted by a waiter at the restaurant who asked me where I'm from, and we started chatting, and it turns out he is Jamaican and Palestinian. But ultimately, I think if you have internal biases against Palestinians, you should not be going to Palestine. And if you don't want to acknowledge the experiences of Palestinians in their entirety, then to be honest, we don't need you as an ally. Seeing what Palestinians are going through only makes you think, yeah, no, we have it worse. When you're an American, you are not a true ally. And I will be talking more about the issue of people taking trips to Palestine with a limited understanding of Palestinians and Palestinian history, because there were so many other issues with some of the people who went on this trip for all the wrong reasons. I don't know what I was expecting from my trip to Palestine, but I certainly did not expect to walk away with racial tensions between myself and the Black people in our group. And that's
Wow, that was quite the experience, but it needs to bring us back to basics. Racism, being biased based on race, color, or religion, has no place with humanity. We all have to remember that we were all created in God's image. Regardless what the color of our skin is, regardless of our race or our religion, that should not be a determining factor. One needs to be able to look at each other and just see God's image in them, and be able to look through the eyes. The eyes is the window of the soul, and just look through the person. You'll see the purity. You'll see how great the person is and what kind of great potential they have, putting aside color. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. At a very young child, I was assaulted, I was attacked by young black men, and I grew up thinking that I'm white, they're black, but why am I being treated like this? This was in the 60s when violence was rampant, and I'm growing up with this and trying to understand it. And as I studied the Torah, and as I grew into a person, I began to realize, regardless of race, color, or religion, in God's eyes, we're all His children, we're all the same. There are in New York right now, there are congregations with African Americans, Black Orthodox Jews that are just living the life just like white Orthodox Jews. And we're living in blessed times right now, very different than what our founding fathers had to deal with. We've come a very long way to look past color, but to be able to look at the person, who the person is. And each one of us, below our skin color, we are all absolutely precious and beautiful in God's eyes, and we need to see that as well. And we shall never ever judge anyone, not by the color of the skin, not by their race, not by their religion, because God doesn't judge us like that. So her experience on this trip must have been pretty difficult, because she has been working very hard to break the biases. But we all can do that. We all can continue in doing that in our own way, and totally obliterating any type of bias, any type of racism that comes up, no matter what ethnic group, ethnicity you are faced with. We have to be able to look past the extremities, but focus on the soul, focus on the beautiful flame that God has given us, that each one of us were created in God's image. So let's pray and hope that us humans as humanity, that we could see how we are all born individually and different, but yet we are all the same and will always be the same. We need to be able to embrace each other and to be able to love each other, regardless of any race, color, or religion. This is what the Bible said: love your fellow as yourself. Unconditional. And then God will love us unconditionally. God bless you. God loves you.